She ironed her blouse at 5:30 in the morning, not because she had to be anywhere early, because she had woken up at 4 and lain in the dark for 90 minutes and finally decided that lying still was worse than moving. So she got up and she ironed the blouse, and she did it slowly and carefully, every crease, because doing something with her hands kept the other thing from taking over. The other thing being the grief. The grief that was, at this point, 11 months old and still arriving every morning like an uninvited guest she had stopped being surprised by but had not yet learned to turn away. It came in different forms. Some mornings it was heavy, a physical weight across the chest, a reluctance in every limb, a stillness that felt dangerous if she let it go on too long. Some mornings it was sharp, sudden, and specific, triggered by something small. A song, a smell. The way the morning light came through the kitchen window at a certain angle that he had always said made the room look like it was made of gold. This morning, it was the ironing. Because he had always teased her about it, called it her therapy, said that whenever he couldn't find her in the morning, he just followed the smell of hot cotton, and there she'd be pressing perfect lines into things that didn't need them, getting ready for a day she could have faced in a wrinkled shirt just fine. She pressed the collar flat. She hung the blouse on the door. She went to the kitchen and made coffee for one, which she had still not entirely gotten used to, and she looked at the morning light coming through the window, and she did not cry. She made sure of that. Her name was Diane. Diane Okafor, 53 years old, head of operations at a mid-sized logistics company in Columbus, Ohio, where she had worked for 19 years and had risen with the kind of steadiness that people called reliable, and she called simply showing up. She was the person others brought problems to. She was the person who knew how the building worked, who remembered the procedures, who stayed calm when systems failed and calmly found the workaround. She wore her hair natural, kept neat. She had a laugh that she kept on a short leash at work but let loose entirely with people she trusted, which was a short list, carefully maintained. She was 60 pages into a novel at any given time and had strong opinions about which season of the year was the best one for reading. Autumn, always. There was no argument. She had been married to Edward for 26 years. Edward Okafor, who had been an electrical engineer by training and a storyteller by nature, a man who could make a 15-minute account of a trip to the hardware store feel like something worth listening to. He had made friends everywhere, without effort. He had a way of giving people his full attention that made them feel, afterward, like they had been briefly famous. He had loved Diane with a quiet, unwavering constancy that she had taken for granted in the way you take for granted the floor beneath your feet, not without appreciation, but without conscious acknowledgement, because it was simply always there. Until it wasn't. He had died 11 months ago. A heart attack, sudden and complete, on a Tuesday afternoon in October while he was changing a light bulb in the upstairs hallway. She had come home from work to find him. She had called 911 and given accurate information and answered every question clearly. The paramedics had commented, later, to a neighbor, on how composed she had been. She had been composed. She was always composed. That was the problem, and the gift, and the prison of it, all at once. They had built a life together that had the particular texture of something made carefully over a long time, not perfect, not without friction, but solid in the way that things are solid when two people have chosen each other through enough seasons to know what choosing actually means. They had 2 children, Marcus, 24, who lived in Atlanta and worked in tech and called every Sunday without fail, and Priya, who they had adopted from India when she was 3 years old, and who was now 21 and studying environmental science in Michigan, and who cried on the phone in a way that Diane envied because Priya had never learned to hide it. Diane had learned to hide it very young. Her own mother had been a woman of tremendous strength, a woman who had immigrated from Nigeria at 22 with very little and built something real through effort and will and an absolute refusal to be defeated by hard circumstances. She was a woman who pressed on, who did not dwell, who said, when times were difficult, that tears did not build anything, and what needed to be built was always still waiting. Diane had loved her mother, had admired her completely, had absorbed her entirely. She had not cried at her own mother's funeral 7 years ago. She had organized the reception and thanked the guests and held her younger sister when her younger sister needed holding. She had been the strong one. She had always been the strong one. It was a role she had never auditioned for and did not know how to leave. After Edward died, people came. Of course they came. He had been beloved, and she was well regarded, and the community of their life was full. There were casseroles and flower arrangements and cards with careful handwriting, and colleagues who came to the door with food they had cooked themselves, which she knew was an act of love and received as such, even though the refrigerator filled up faster than she could eat, and some of it went quietly to waste. She accepted everything with grace, thanked everyone specifically. She was good with names, with faces, with a particular gesture each person had made. She wrote handwritten notes. She took phone calls. She answered, "How are you holding up?" with "I'm taking it one day at a time," which was honest enough to be true and brief enough to close the question. She went back to work 3 weeks after the funeral. People said she was remarkable. They said it the way people say remarkable when they mean something else, when they mean strong, but also perhaps a little unsettling, a little too composed, a little beyond the range of what grief is supposed to look like from the outside. She heard it as a compliment. She filed it under things she was proud of. She did not understand yet what it was costing her. She had a system. She called it that in her own mind, a system. Something operational, something she could manage. Grief needed to be managed the way everything else needed to be managed. It needed a structure, a container, a set of parameters. Left uncontained, she knew it would overflow everywhere, and she could not have that. Could not be overflowing at work, could not be overflowing when Marcus called on Sundays, could not be overflowing when the neighbors asked how she was doing at the mailbox. So she contained it. She allowed herself 10 minutes every evening, alone in the bedroom, door closed. 10 minutes in which she could feel whatever came, the weight, the sharpness, the specific missing that had no word large enough for it. She set a timer on her phone. When it went off, she got up, washed her face with cold water, and moved on. She thought this was coping. She thought this was healthy. She thought this was the responsible management of a difficult emotion by a capable woman who had things to do and people who needed her functional. What it was, though she would not know this for a long time, was burial. She was burying herself in 10-minute increments every evening and calling it strength. It was her daughter Priya who first saw it. Priya came home from Michigan for Thanksgiving, the first Thanksgiving, the terrible first one, the one that loomed in Diane's calendar for months before it arrived. Diane had planned the meal with precision, had bought everything Edward always bought, had cooked everything he had always loved. She had set the table beautifully, and she had not left a space where his chair should have been. She had brought in a chair from the study and set 4 places, and she had not explained it, and the children had not asked. After dinner, Marcus had gone to take a call from his girlfriend, and Diane was in the kitchen washing dishes, and Priya came in and stood beside her at the sink. They washed together for a few minutes without talking. Priya had her mother's hands wide-palmed, efficient, and she worked beside her in easy silence. Then Priya said, very quietly, "Mom, when did you last actually cry?" Diane kept washing. "I cry. When?" A pause. "I have 10 minutes in the evening." Priya put down the dish she was holding and looked at her mother. Diane did not look back. She kept her eyes on the sink. 10 minutes, Priya said. "It's enough time, Mom." And her voice was gentle and young, and completely without judgment, the voice of a person who had grown up watching her mother hold everything together and had always been quietly, privately worried about the cost. "He was your person for 26 years. 10 minutes is not enough time." Diane did not say anything. Her hands were still in the warm water. She was looking at the drain. "I know you think it's weakness," Priya said, "but I've seen you be strong my whole life. and I've never once seen you be sad. And I think she stopped. Started again. I think you might not know the difference anymore. Diane stood very still. The water was getting cold. She did not cry. Not then. She thanked Priya for the observation, which was a thing she did when she needed to close a door without slamming it. And she finished the dishes. And she went to her 10 minutes that night and set the timer and sat in the bedroom and felt the grief arrive the way it always did, on schedule. Contained, obedient, but Priya's words were there in the room with her. I think you might not know the difference anymore. The timer went off. She did not get up. She sat for 23 minutes that night. She knew because she looked at the phone afterward and counted. 23 minutes more than twice the allowance, which should have felt like failure and instead felt like the first breath after being underwater for longer than you knew. Nothing dramatic happened in those 23 minutes. She did not sob. She did not break down in any way that would have looked significant from the outside. She just sat and let the grief be as large as it actually was, instead of trimming it down to fit the 10-minute window. And the grief, given room, shifted slightly. It did not diminish. It did not hurt less, but it moved the way something that has been held perfectly still finally moves when you release your grip. It spread out. It settled differently. Less pressure in one concentrated point. More distributed. More, somehow, bearable. She sat with it for 23 minutes, and then she put her phone down, and she looked at the photograph on the bedside table, Edward, at Marcus's college graduation, laughing at something someone had just said, completely unaware of the camera, completely himself, and she talked to him out loud, which she had not done before. She said, "I don't know how to do this without you." She said it to a photograph in a quiet room, and it was the truest thing she had said out loud in 11 months. She did not cry, but her voice broke on without you, and she let it break, and she did not immediately clear her throat and compose herself. She just let it stay broken for a moment. And in that moment, something very small but very real began. She called her younger sister Joan the next day. Joan, who lived in Detroit, who had always been the emotional one, the expressive one, the one their mother had called too soft, and Diane had privately agreed with, and now thought about differently. Joan, who had cried at the funeral while Diane held her. Joan, who had called every week since Edward died, and to whom Diane had consistently said she was fine. She was managing. She was okay. Joan answered on the second ring. Diane said, "I'm not okay." A silence. Then Joan said, "I know, honey. I've been waiting." She drove to Detroit that weekend, packed a bag on Friday evening, and told Marcus she was going to see Joan, and he said, "Good, Mom, that's good," in a voice that told her he had been worried too, had been watching her compose herself through every Sunday phone call, and had not known how to say so. She and Joan sat at Joan's kitchen table for 3 hours, and Diane talked, not managed, not contained, not presented in orderly form. Just talked. About Edward. About the light bulb. About coming home that Tuesday. About the ironing in the mornings and what it was really about. About the 10 minutes. About Priya's question. Joan listened and cried and did not try to fix any of it. And at some point Diane could not say exactly when. It did not arrive with a warning. Diane's eyes filled, and she did not wipe them away. She let them fill. She let her face do the thing it had been not doing for 11 months, through a funeral and 3 weeks of casseroles and dozens of how are you holding up conversations and 10 minutes every evening with a timer. She cried at her sister's kitchen table, not tidily, not briefly, not composed. Joan held her hand and let her. Afterward, Diane sat with her eyes red and her face bare, and a cup of tea she had not touched, and she felt something she had not expected. Not better, exactly, not lighter in the simple way, but more real, more present in her own body. like she had been watching herself from a slight distance for 11 months and had just, in the last hour, stepped back inside. She did not give up the ironing. She wanted to say that clearly she was still herself, still operational, still the woman who showed up and knew how the building worked and kept the procedures in her head. Grief had not made her someone else. Grief had not dismantled anything fundamental. But she let some things change. She took the timer off the 10 minutes. Some evenings it was 5, some evenings it was 40. She let it be what it needed to be rather than what was manageable, and over time she began to find that the grief, given permission to be its actual size, stopped needing to ambush her. It stopped arriving without warning in the form of ironing at 5:30 in the morning. It came when it came, and she learned to recognize it and sit with it and let it move through, rather than pressing it into a timed container and calling that processing. She called Joan every Thursday, not because Joan had asked, but because Diane had discovered, at 53 years old, that having someone who let her be sad was not a weakness in her, but a need, a real, ordinary human need that she had spent decades treating like a character flaw. She went to a grief support group in January. She had resisted it. It had felt, to her, like something for people who could not handle things on their own. She understood now that this was exactly backwards. Going was the handling. Staying alone with the timer was the avoidance. She sat in a circle in a church basement with 8 other people and listened to a man talk about losing his wife, and a young woman talk about losing her mother, and an older man who said he sometimes forgot, for just a moment when he woke up, that his son was gone, and then he remembered. And that second of forgetting, followed by the remembering, was the hardest thing. Diane sat in that circle, and she did not compose herself for anyone. She spoke when it was her turn. She said Edward's name out loud in a room full of strangers, and her voice only broke once. She let it break. After the meeting, a woman named Ruth touched her arm and said simply, "He sounds like he was wonderful." "He was," Diane said, and she smiled, not the managed smile, not the public smile, not the "I'm fine" smile, the real one. The one Edward had always said he could tell apart from the others from across any room. She drove home in the dark, and the city was quiet, and she thought about him the whole way, not the grief of him, just him. His stories about hardware stores, his full attention, his voice when he said her name, the way he made the morning light sound like something worth noticing. She pulled into the driveway. She sat in the car for a moment. She said, to the dark, "I saw you. I'm going to keep seeing you." She meant it as a promise, and a practice, and a way of keeping something alive that she was learning did not have to be buried along with the man she had lost. She got out of the car. She went inside. She left the ironing for morning. "There is something I want to say to you now, gently and directly, because this story was always reaching towards something in you. Strength and suppression are not the same thing. And for many women who grew up watching someone hold everything together, women who became the reliable one, the capable one, the one others leaned on, the line between them can become invisible. You stop feeling the line at all. You think the not crying is the strength, when sometimes, the not crying is simply the long habit of making yourself manageable for other people's comfort." Diane was strong, genuinely, remarkably strong, but she had confused strength with containment for so long that she could not find the difference anymore. And what she lost in that confusion was not weakness, it was access. Access to her own grief, her own self, the realest parts of her own interior life. If you have spent years being the one who holds it together, who shows up composed, who fields the "how are you" with a smile and an efficient answer, it is worth asking yourself when the last time was that someone sat with you in something real. Not a managed version of it, the actual thing. The second thing is this: grief is not a problem to be optimized. It is not an operational issue with a workaround. It is the shape that love takes when the person is gone, and it needs room, not unlimited room, not forever, not at the expense of everything else, but real room. More than 10 minutes, with a timer. You do not have to earn the right to fall apart sometimes. You do not have to be impressive in your sadness. The people who love you do not need you composed. They need you present, and often, the composed version is the least present version of you there is. And the last thing, the thing I want you to carry. Diane found her way back to herself, not through an ending, but through a permission. She simply stopped denying herself the space that she had always freely given to others. She stopped making herself small in the only way she had ever made herself small, not in public, not professionally, not in her capability, but in her own private interior, where no one could see. You are allowed to be seen. Even in the hard parts. Especially in the hard parts. The tears you have been making sure no one sees, they are not a failure of your strength. They are proof that you have loved something real. And that is never, ever something to hide.